Salsies. It's me, SallyAnn. This is part 2 of my conversation about ADHD with my dear friend Lynne. If you missed part 1, pause this, go back, and listen to part 1. I promise it'll make way more sense. Okay, let's jump back in. Let's talk about the supports that you've put in place that help you survive life, because maybe we can give some people some ideas they haven't had before. So I write everything down. My calendar is super important to me, my Google Calendar. Alerts, timers, alarms, all those things. I like to have visual reminders because things are out of sight, out of mind for me. And often I just have to put something in my way so I don't forget. I've also really learned just not to overdo it. And by that, I mean, like, don't overschedule. Don't over anything. Just don't overdo it. I just can't. I mean, that's just how I operate. Good habits. I need good habits to get shit done. And I'm reading a very good book about habits right now. It's called Better Than Before. It's by Gretchen Rubin. And one of the things that I really like about the idea of habits is you don't have to decide. Like, you don't have to wake up every morning and decide what to do next. If you have a good habit in place for a thing that you do all the time, you don't have to decide. And that brings down that cognitive load that we have every day that can be so exhausting that if you are making decisions and organizing things and managing things, it can be too much. And so having good habits, just like put everything, set it and forget it. Not everything.
But yeah, the things that you can.
Yeah, the things that you can, the things that are recurring. So good habits are really helpful. Something that I really, really love is body doubling.
I was just going to say that.
So I'll explain it to listeners who have never heard it before. Body doubling is just having a buddy with you to help you get something done. And they don't even need to be working on the thing that you are working on. My example is I hate folding laundry. And just having someone in the room with me while I do it is enough for me to get it done. If you're helping me, even better. But that's not what body doubling is. Body doubling is just having a body next to you.
One of those things that really seems like it shouldn't work as well as it does.
Yes, it's a really simple and kind of weird idea, and it works so good.
Yeah, because it's not like you're asking somebody to be there and to like be holding you accountable or be your drill sergeant. It's like, no, I literally just want you to be there.
Right.
When I was in high school, I used to buy my best friend cigarettes if she would come and just hang out in my room while I cleaned it. Because otherwise I wouldn't. Yeah. And I'm like, you could literally be doing whatever you want. You don't have to talk to me. You could talk to me. It doesn't matter. Because I had figured out, I was like, oh, it seems like it works better when she's there. And so I'll just see if she wants to come over. And she was like, I don't care. Like, this is the 90s. Like, what else are we going to do? It's not like we had the internet.
So a thing that I learned about recently, and I have been using because I did some ADHD web search because I was trying to get my shit together, is essentially virtual body doubling. And so Lynn knows about this. We've even done this for each other. But there are services on the internet. Focus Mate is the one that I've found that I like. And you just pick a time of a day and you say, I want a buddy. And you and the stranger on the internet, you just both jump on a video call. And at the beginning of the hour or however long you decided you want to do it, you say, hey, what are you working on? And they say, oh, I'm working on my dissertation. What are you working on? Oh, I'm trying to write a book. And they go, cool. And then you go on mute and they're right there. And I get so much more done.
It's insane how much more I get done.
It is insane. It's bananas here in USA. I love it. I'm using it because it works. I'm not going to ask myself why it works. I'm not going to make myself feel weird for it. My husband thinks it's the strangest thing on earth and his personal nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things about ADHD that I'm like, I don't know why it works, but
yeah,
like you said, I don't care.
I don't care. If it works, great. Fantastic.
Great. I mean, it feels fine. It feels good. It feels easy. And, we all like feeling productive. At least all of us were type A nerd folks. And it doesn't feel shamey. When I was growing up, that was often how I got myself to do things, was to like shame myself about
Right.
not doing them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel like that at all, which is great.
Yes. Yeah. And shame did get us somewhere, but there was like a big cost.
A big cost. And it like there's a real diminishing returns there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Tell me some supports that you use that maybe I didn't mention.
Well, you mentioned so many that I do use.
Yes.
I think the visual reminders is a big one. I think for me, I realized that because I realized how annoyed I was by clutter.
Same.
And then I was like, wait a minute. If I am easily distracted by things that are out, then I can also use that to remember things that I actually do want to remember. And I use that combined with like habit stacking or like, so for instance, I keep my vitamins next to my coffee because I don't forget my coffee.
Same.
But I will forget my vitamins, my medication.
That's where my vitamin D is because I put it right in my coffee.
Yeah. Every time because that's there. Or like when, nobody remembers to refill the toilet paper in the bathroom, I'll take the last empty roll and leave it out on the counter. And I'll be like, don't throw this away. Don't do it.
Are we the same person?
We might be.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. But, that kind of thing of this is there so that I remember to do something with it. And when I'm done with it, I will put it somewhere that I can't see it because at that point, it's fine if I forget about it.
Yeah. I'm like a baby. I have object impermanence.
Yeah. Truly, truly.
Yeah. I will intentionally put something in my way so I don't forget it.
I do that so many times a day. Like so many times. But that's also why I'm constantly annoyed at everyone I live with because they don't feel like that. And so they're just leaving crap all over the place. And I was like, oh my God, do you think I'm going to be able to do anything in a house full of junk?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not, super duper clean all the time, but I'm just like, can we not have everything out at all times?
Right.
Would be fantastic.
I know.
But it's like, two sides of the same coin. But yeah, I mean, body doubling, visual reminders for sure. I mean, I've mentioned like I do a lot of timers just to kind of mark the passing of time more than anything, of just little things of like, before I came over here, I set myself a timer to be like, when this one goes off, you should have your shoes on. And that's all that was, of just like, oh, okay, time to have my shoes on. Because otherwise I'll just get sucked into something or the other. And I just, approaching that with that's not a problem, it's just true, has been very helpful because I don't need to give myself shit about it. I don't need to shame myself about like, oh my God, you can't believe so much time's gone past. Like, no, of course it has. Time goes past, blah, blah, blah. It's just, and now it's time to do the next thing.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I do, and this is specifically in order to get places on time, I realized... I didn't realize this until after I was getting treatment for ADHD when I was able to like be nicer to myself about everything. But I realized that for whatever reason, when I have a reminder that's like such and such a thing starts at 5, for better or for worse, my brain is like, great. So we need to leave at 4:59, like always. It doesn't matter how far away it is, unless it's like many hours away, in which case I will give myself, be to 4 hours away. I'll give myself 3 days to get there. But if it's something local, like appointments or whatever, I just won't leave on time because I'm looking at it and my brain is like, it says 5:00. And I'm like, yeah, that's what time you have to be there. But it just doesn't matter. So now I instead put it in my calendar at the time that I need to leave. So I see my chiropractor like every other week and I'll put it in there and I'm like, Dr. Lou, 8:15. But in my calendar, I've put it at 8 a.m. because that's when I actually need to be getting in the car to go there in order to show up on time. And that is another one of those things that I'm like, this seems too simple to work, right? I'm like, that's dumb. And yet I haven't been late for many things in many years now.
Yeah. I think of you as a punctual person.
In general. And yet there's like some of this like old junk in there from when I was growing up. I mean, one of the things that will make me the most anxious is if me and the family are running behind and, like as a mom, right? I'm getting everybody else's shit together. I'm the one who's making sure that we have sunscreen and everyone brought their water bottle and did everybody go to the bathroom and blah, blah, blah.
Got the snacks in your bag.
Right. And then, oops, I haven't even gotten dressed yet. But if we're running behind and for whatever reason, it has the appearance that I'm the reason that we're behind, I will lose my shit. And that's just an echo of old shame.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah. Growing up, I was definitely given the impression that it was the children, myself, was why we were late all the time. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that was true.
Yeah, well, and I try and be really honest about that. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I got distracted. Because and some of that too is both of the kids have ADHD. And so I'm trying to be really thoughtful about how I talk about ADHD and how I talk about how I am in the world, because I don't want them to, they don't need to go down that shame train.
Yeah.
That train sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to mention medication because my experience is, I talked with my doctor and she was like, try it. If it works, great. And if it doesn't, we'll stop. And I was like, well, what could I do? And so I went on a medication and immediately saw changes and was like, I guess this means it's working. It's a weird thing because it's not like a physical affliction where you're like, oh, now this is, my levels are perfect now.
Right. Or this wound that I had is healing.
Right. It's so much squishier than that. Mm-hmm. And so how do you tell if the medicine is working? And I was like, okay, well, I've been able to complete more tasks. And I had more energy or something. And I was like, I think it's working. And I took that medicine for 6 months. And eventually I wasn't getting the shit done that I wanted to be getting done. And so I think it was still true. Yes, I was able to complete tasks. They were just kind of the wrong ones. Whoops, And so I was curious. I was like, what's the other one like? And so I had been taking Ritalin. And I was like, what does Adderall do to me? And so with my doctor, I was like, hey, I talked about all these things. And she was like, okay, let's try the other one. And immediately was like, this is the one. Yeah. And I'm really glad that I did the experiment. Yeah. Because it did seem like the other one was working because it was showing some signs of improvement. But with the Adderall, which I'm on an extended release, I was on the other one too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Extended release is way better.
I don't know. I haven't done the short acting one. I've only done extended release. That's really kind of all I'm comfortable with. But the difference, and I texted you about this, for me on the Adderall, and I was like, this is different, was I started taking the medicine and I was like, I feel strangely calm. And it's a stimulant, and that's where, if you don't know anything about any of these things, and the first thing you hear about something that you give to someone who's hyperactive, if that's what you think is the only type, and you give them a stimulant, you're like, what the fuck? Crazy. Right. But it focuses them in the right direction. Yeah. But so that was weird for me. That was kind of wild for me that I was like, I feel strangely calm, and it didn't amp me up. And when I first started taking the Ritalin, I was amped up at first. And I was like, my body's adjusting. And I had to drink less coffee and breathe more. And so I'm glad I did this experiment. And, I could have just stayed on the Ritalin forever and been like, yeah, this is how things work, I guess. I don't know. I'm glad I was curious enough and felt comfortable enough to be like, what if? And try the other one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had taken Ritalin back in grad school, mostly as an attempt to deal with my intense sleepiness. And it helped with that. But I didn't really, at that point, I hadn't thought of myself as having ADHD or hadn't even really considered it. And
it was kind of like an off-label use.
Yeah. It was just like, we need a stimulant. And I was like, I mean, I guess I'm a little bit less tired, but I'm like, I'm not. I'm like, shouldn't I be up?
Wow.
I'm like, it's not doing that for me. And they're like, I don't know, weird. And then I just sort of went off of it. I don't remember what happened with there because I have no good working memory. Hilarious. But yeah, when I went on Adderall, almost instantly, I was like, oh my God, I have so much less anxiety right now. And I remember thinking, like, have you guys been living like this? And then I realized, I'm like, yeah, they have.
Which is a little upsetting.
Like, this is the place where other people were starting from.
That's
and
the
I was
baseline.
like, oh my God, it was never me.
Right. Like, this wasn't a fair race, was it?
Like, that was so... I really had a big experience with just recognizing, I'm like, oh my God, because I wasn't like up and crazy or anything. I was just like, I'm just calm. I'm just not overwhelmed. I'm just able to focus on one thought at a time. And just realizing, wow, I have been working against a lot. And I didn't realize how much I was working against until I wasn't. You know, I kind of described my experience going on Adderall as realizing that I was like in a train yard, and being on Adderall, it's like all the trains are on the track. And, you know, I still have to move them somewhere, but they've got a shot now. And realizing that before they were just like all in the yard. I'm like, of course I'm not going anywhere. I was like, there's so much work to do before I can even get to the part where I can think about doing something. So for me, I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now I can attempt to do something, and all of my hard work will start showing up in things actually working.
Yeah.
Like, what a concept. But yeah, I mean, that was a really big one for me. But yeah, I mean, I similarly, like when I take the Adderall, I'm like, I feel relaxed, I feel calm, I feel capable and present in a way that I just literally could not be before.
Yeah. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think I've heard or read that if that medicine amps you up, then you don't have ADHD. Like, that's not how it works.
I've heard that too, you know, and giant asterisk, not a doctor.
Same.
But I have heard that as well. And I actually like had a brief moment where I was like, man, all these people say Adderall is a really fun drug to take. And I'm like, I guess I'll never experience that because it's not fun. I'm like, it's nice. Mm-hmm. Like it's, you know, I would like to continue taking that forever, but it's not a party drug unless it's a spreadsheet party.
Man, that's my kind of party.
You know, that's really where I'm at with it. But yeah, it's not a, you know, people are like, oh my God, I can't believe you would basically take meth. And I was like, man, if this is what meth is like, if only it didn't have this other side effects, I would have taken that. Because I was just trying so much coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much coffee.
I feel like we covered a ton and we covered the stuff that I wanted to talk about. Is there anything else that you wanted to say?
One thing that I think about when I think about my journey to ADHD diagnosis that feels relevant is I started thinking about it because I saw a bunch of memes about ADHD and I really related to them.
Oh.
But it took me, I was like, oh yeah, I mean, everybody has a hard time paying attention sometimes. But it was really like that sort of jokey way of talking about it that made me go, oh, maybe there is something there. Like if I keep seeing this over and over again and going, like, this is really the most relatable meme that I've seen again, you know, I'm just like, oh, that's good information to have. And one of them that I saw that I feel like I remember repeating to you at one point a few years ago was that neurodivergent people travel in packs. So if all of your friends have ADHD and you quote unquote don't, I've got news for you. And it was like a number of my other like adult female friends were like, I just got diagnosed with ADHD. I was like, no way. And it was just like there, and you're just like people who didn't even know each other. And I was like, that's crazy. And I was like, it's so weird how all my friends have ADHD. And I saw that and I was like, okay, weird's one word for it.
Oh my gosh.
And I think especially for like high achieving women who are very put together. And like I said, I mean, I have long thought of myself, I'm like, I'm really good at being an adult. I have got my shit together. Other people come to me for advice.
Yeah.
I don't have ADHD.
Right.
And I was like, if I had ADHD, I wouldn't be able to do any of this. But it's actually because I had rampant undiagnosed ADHD that I had to do that.
That's so true. You did.
Yeah. But, it was helpful to just recognize, I'm like, oh, this doesn't need to come from like it being so disruptive or any of those things. Like that's really like jokes on the internet is what made me realize I had ADHD. So that's why, I mean, I think that self-diagnosis can be so valuable because that's where I was like, oh, I'm going to think about this. And then, obviously I eventually went to a doctor and did, this whole formal process, but.
You've answered a question that I said I had. I was like, what drove you to get a diagnosis? I love your answer so bad. It was memes.
I did it for the memes.
I love it. Okay. I want to tell this story that I love so much. We were on a rooftop bar. We were at Bayside in Portland, and it was a beautiful summer day. And you had just been diagnosed, and you were like really excited. And you... You go, I have ADHD. And then you looked at me really pointedly and you go, do you?
That sounds like something I would say.
I know. And I go, no, I don't think. Oh my God, I was so busted. And you're so right. And it was so funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me a little bit too. Like when I first started thinking about trying medication, I had this like moment of panic. I was like, okay, what if it works like too well? Because I realized in coming to my diagnosis that I was like, this is what makes me have such creative ideas. This what makes me so spontaneous and curious and interesting and like having cool creative ideas all the time. And I was like, this is probably what makes me funny. I'm like, is this my personality? Ooh. And I was like, I don't want to lose any of that. And I was very, very grateful to find that did not impact that. I mean, I still have lots of creative ideas and I have all of those sorts of things are retained because it turns out I still have ADHD. I just have a really, really good tool in my toolkit.
Right. Multiple. You have multiple tools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have like this like powerhouse of a tool that I didn't have before, but I still am the same person that I was before. I still have a lot of those traits that, some of them probably happen to come via ADHD.
Yeah.
But, it's like my kids, I talk to my 8-year-old. I'm always like, I refer to ADHD as having a quote, cool creative brain. And I was like, how I have a cool creative brain? I'm like, this is the medicine that I take that helps me with that. Or, I'll talk about her cool creative brain or like, oh man, because we got these cool creative brains, like we're so good at X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. You talked about how your brain is so full of so many different things or it's always, buzzing. Agreed. Me too. I think that we have a really good capacity to connect things that other people might not connect. Yeah. Things that are disparate. That's creativity. Like that helps us come up with different ideas, new ideas, crazy ideas, whatever, because we have so much rumbling around up there and those synapses are crossing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a real powerful aspect to it too, of like that intense creativity, like that ability to think through things that people sometimes have a harder time with or whatever it is. There's a lot of upsides to ADHD too. It's just, and I try and, really frame for the kids, but also for myself. It was like, this is not just a negative thing. It is a thing that has made many things in my life harder. Also true, it has brought me so many of these things about my personality that I really cherish. That I'm like, this is a really cool part of me that I have because I have this cool creative brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also just happen to have the memory of a goldfish.
Me too.
All of these things are true.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Well, I like to think that I can experience good things multiple times. Like I can experience a really cool thing for the first time multiple times.
I have said about like movies and stuff. And I was like, I will happily watch that movie again because every time is the first time. I mean, truly every time. I mean, like, I'll remember, I'm like, oh, it's got some guy in it. I think is he tall? Like, that's about what I remember.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, being able to look at that and go, oh, that's cool. Like, I get to hear a story about something that I did and be like, that's hilarious. I don't remember that at all. You know, and sometimes obviously the memory thing is not so great. Although like so many times kids especially will be like, oh, well, you said blah, blah, blah. And I just say, I don't remember it that way, but I do believe that happened. I'm not trying to call you a liar.
Yeah.
I did not retain that information.
Yeah. Often I'm saying, that sounds like something I would say.
Yeah.
Was I there?
I probably did say that. You know, another thing that I didn't initially think of as helpful with ADHD, but I do think in this context it really is I do a lot of journaling, as you also do. And specifically, I do digital journaling. And I do it every day, and it's usually very short, and sometimes it's very long. But a lot of it's just like, here's what happened. It's very low key. But what that has allowed me to do is when I look back, because every morning I first look at the entries from that day in previous years. So it allows me to really track how changed I am and how my moods have shifted. And like, you know, I'll read an entry being like, I started Adderall. I wonder what this is going to be like. And then like 6 months later, be like, I'm just really relaxed all the time. I'm not sure what happened. I don't know what, I don't think I'm doing anything different in my life. And then now I'm like, like, I remember that, you know, so being able to like really notice, like, you know, for better or for worse, like notice like patterns in my own behavior and my own thought processes and what I was thinking and feeling at different times, and being able to kind of track that and go, oh, right, that actually did change. It didn't feel like it was changing, but now I can see that it really did.
Yeah. I use tracking mechanisms too.
Yeah.
Because I can't remember. And it can be so hard to be like, oh, how did I feel 6 months ago? I don't care what your brain's like. That's a hard question.
Here's the thing. Most people just don't. They'll go, well, I guess I'll never know. We are just like, I should know.
I want to know.
I
need to know.
I should be able to do that. I should be able to know, you know, what my symptoms of X, Y, and Z were 6 months ago.
You know, that's probably one of the reasons why I like data so much, is because my memory is so bad. And I'm like, prove it.
Did I ever tell you about the time that I went to my doctor to get my hormones tested, and I brought in 6 months of like, I had my basal body temperature and various symptoms and other things that were going on in my life and illnesses. I was like, I'm so sorry. This is probably not what you want. And then I pull out this massive chart, and she was like, oh my God. I was like, I can send this to you if you want. She goes, yes. Of course I want this. And I was like, this is how I am, right? I just have this like drive of like, I'm supposed to know. I don't know about you, but I know for me, like I have this feeling of like, I have a bad memory. And so I need to work really hard to remember things, which is true. Also, I'm working really hard at remembering things that I don't actually really need to remember that well. But that has its upsides too, right? I have a window into the history of my feelings that many people do not have. I am able to say like, yes, absolutely. These things happened in this order on this time frame because I have written it all down in a response to feeling like I'm going to forget it if I don't write it down.
Yeah.
But it means I have a lot of things written down.
Well, and yours is digital, so it's searchable. I journal on paper, and so it's not searchable, but I have gotten better at things that I'm like, I'm going to need to reference this later, that I'll do digitally.
Yeah. And I think too, you know, I know for me, writing things down helps me remember them better, even if I never look at the paper again.
That's a scientific fact.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Science.
Science. Go science.
Look at us. Guess we're doctors after all.
Yep. Now we are. Done. Yeah, I'm really glad we talked about this. Lynn, thank you. Thank you for talking to me and our audience about your experience with ADHD. I have learned so much about ADHD just by being your friend. And you're very smart and very well researched. And something I neglected to mention is one of the reasons why I figured out so much about my own ADHD is because my son was diagnosed. And I've heard that a lot, that parents go through the diagnosis process with their kid and then they go, whoopsie. Me too.
What do you mean it's genetic? Which one of us? You're like, oh.
Well, you're like tracking the symptoms that your kid has and you're like, sames.
You're like, oh, but everybody has that.
And that's not
And it
true.
turns out, no, everybody with ADHD has that.
Everyone in your family has that.
Yep.
So yeah, that's one of the ways that I got to my diagnosis.
Yes, I think that's really common.
Yes, exactly. So my son got diagnosed and I was like, I have all those same things. What is going on? Even though we have different ADHD, but I had to do so much education for myself that I figured out all these things and was like, oopsie daisies.
It's me. I'm in this picture and I don't like it.
That is exactly it.
Yes.
So thank you for talking about ADHD with me. We are going to do our joy share now. So we are each going to share one thing that is bringing us joy currently. I will start. The thing that is bringing me joy right now is the television show Severance. I love it real bad and am obsessed with it. A little bit of hyper focus, don't care. It's fun for me. I like it. So yeah, season 2 of Severance just started rolling out and have been watching that with my mister and love it so much. And all the theories and the lore, it's bringing me a lot of joy. What about you? What's your joy share?
It's actually been really nice to have a beginning of a new year that I've gone easy on myself. You know,
Are you usually a resolution person?
I'm like an intention and habits is what I call my resolutions. Yeah. No, this is about routine and self-care, which it is. And I have tended to be, just harder on myself than I needed to be. And I think this is also from a meme, but I think about this one a lot. It's like, if being hard on yourself worked, it would have worked by now.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, maybe I try it the other way. Ooh. Maybe I just see, maybe I'll just like, well, let's pick one thing and see how it feels to do that. And if it feels good, great. And if it doesn't, also good. Information out. So I think this is like the first beginning of a year that I've had in a while where I've both been really low key with what my sort of hopes and wishes are for my quote unquote habits and intentions, and not secretly having a bigger goal that I just tell myself I don't actually have, and then giving myself a hard time when I don't meet that. I can tell by your face that you've never experienced anything like that.
I don't even have a term for it called whisper goal. Where you don't tell anybody, but yeah.
But you're like, I do fully expect that I will do that.
Yeah. This big audacious thing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so it's been nice to just be like, yeah, I'm going to pick one of these things that feels like it would be a good thing to do, that feels good to me, and I'm going to just see how it goes. And if it doesn't work, genuinely feeling like that was an okay thing to do.
That's so cool. That sounds like something my therapist has taught me. A term, I don't know if you've heard this. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Trial and error?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
It's new for me.
Yeah, I haven't given that too much of a shot, but...
Well, I don't know if you remember this, but I like to win.
Oh, I know.
So I didn't like that error part. Didn't like it at all.
No, because you just have to get it right the first time, and then everything's fine.
Yep. And if you don't get it right the first time...
You're an asshole.
You're an asshole. You should never do that thing again. And you know what? I knew you weren't going to get it done anyway.
Ugh. Gross.
Mean. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Unsubscribe.
Yeah. Unsubscribe from being mean to yourself. It doesn't work. It doesn't.
You got to be nice to my friend Sally.
And I learned that from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lynn, thank you. I'm so glad you're finally on my podcast. This will not be the last time. Whether you like it or not, you will be back. I just have to find the next topic. Oh, wait, I already have 3.
Naturally.
Yeah, I do, for you specifically. So this was wonderful. Thank you. I really, really hope that our listeners got something out of this. If they either know they have ADHD, think they have ADHD, or know someone with ADHD.
And they definitely have one of those things.
Yep, one of those is true. And hopefully they got some maybe understanding that they didn't have before, some ideas they didn't have before, some tools they didn't have before. And wouldn't it be great if someone could walk away feeling less bad about themselves?
I think that would be a real good outcome. I think that's probably the best part about the ADHD diagnosis for me is I just been a lot nicer to myself.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. So that shame release, it's worth the price of entry.
It is.
So thank you for listening. I really appreciate all of you listening. I really appreciate the really nice messages that I get from my listeners. It means so much. And I can't wait to talk to you next time. This has been your gal pal Sal, and you have just listened to Chin Hairs and F-Bombs Conversations with Girlfriends.